Hey guys, welcome back for another video. What we're going to be doing today is we'll be breaking down our national championship game and trying to preview both of these teams, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses. This is it. This is the final game of the entire 24-25 college football season. We're going to have the Ohio State Buckeyes playing the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, two of the biggest brands in college football history. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments, please drop them below and I will respond. We've gone over every single game since week 0 all the way to the playoffs. Now this is the last game. After this, we'll be in the offseason, but there's a lot going on in the world of football. We also have the NFL playoffs just kicked off this past weekend, so we will also be following that up to the Super Bowl. A lot going on in the world of football, a lot going on in the world of sports. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel so that you can follow along with us. Like I said, the national championship game is coming up. This is it. This is the big one. The season is almost over. Been a fun season, but this coming Monday, January 25th, 7:30 p.m. ESPN, number 8 Ohio State 13-2 versus number 7 Notre Dame 14-1. Right now the Buckeyes are actually very, very large favorites. This is a huge spread for a national championship game. They come in here, they are 8-point favorites. The over under here is 45.5. Looking at Notre Dame, you cannot look past the NIU loss. Obviously, the worst loss of the entire regular season for any college football team, but you have to give props where it's due. Props to Marcus Freeman, Al Golden, Ken Denbrock. What they did since then, they got their teams focused back on track, completely rebuilt their mentality. They had to fight against everyone, fought their way through the regular season, did not drop any more games. Actually, since that loss, the largest margin of victory of any college football team. They were curb stomping people the entire regular season. They got to the playoffs. They've won every single game. They've won it handedly. Georgia. A lot of people pick Georgia. We picked Notre Dame to win by double digits. They beat Georgia double digits, dominated in the trenches on both sides. Then they went to Penn State. A lot of people had them losing that one. They won the Penn State game. Now they are in the national championship as underdogs. And that's probably exactly where they want to be. They have that defense. When you have a defense that's playing that well, you can win any college football game. And then when you look at the Buckeyes, Ryan Day, he had one of the hottest seats coming into this season. Could not beat Michigan. It's been years since he beat Michigan. What does he do this season? He loses by 1 to Oregon during the regular season, and then again loses, gets punched in the mouth versus Michigan again. People are throwing in the towel. What does he do? They refocus their team. That last loss of the season ended the regular season on a loss, and yet somehow they were able to recapture their momentum from that point, carry that momentum through the playoffs. They come out, they play the SEC Tennessee Volunteers, top 15 offense, top 10 defense. They blew the doors off of them. Then they play the Oregon Ducks, the unanimous number 1 team, a team that beat them in the regular season. They blow the doors off them. Then they come in last weekend, another SEC team, a team that played in the SEC championship, Texas Longhorns. They beat them. Their offense wasn't fully working this past weekend. They found a way to win. They were able to make plays when you had to make plays, and their defense stepped up massively to make up for their offenses lacking this past weekend. They found a way to win. There's multiple ways to win a game. Offense, defense, special teams. Their defense won that game for them in the second half. And now both of these teams, two of the oldest, two of the largest brands in college football, they're going to be facing off in the national championship. When you take a look at this game on ESPN's website here, obviously, you have the Buckeyes coming in here, 53.3% chance to win this game. Notre Dame a 44.7. The Buckeyes 8-point favorites. Over in here is 45.5. That is a large favorite. Vegas is not giving Notre Dame much of a chance to win this game. As I mentioned earlier, that's probably exactly where Notre Dame wants to find themselves. They don't want the pressure on them. Put the pressure on Ryan Day's team. Let them do what they do. Let them game strategy here for a run-heavy game. Let their defense carry this team. Let their defense dictate the pace, make the difference. When you look at the Buckeyes, this is the number 3 overall roster according to ESPN. They put a lot of money in the offseason. They held on to their players. They brought in a couple pieces just to complement this team. This is a team that had the number 3 defense last season. They brought back 8 starters from that defense. Basically, everyone who was not a senior, everyone that could come back, came back to make one last run at a national championship. Yes, they wanted to beat Michigan. That didn't happen. But a consolation prize, winning the national championship, that would be pretty good. I would actually rather take that. And they added the pieces they needed. Running back, quarterback, safety. Right now, You have Will Howard leading the way. He's the transfer from Kansas State, 3,800 passing yards, 33 passing touchdowns, 10 picks. He has 40 overall touchdowns. He has 7 rushing touchdowns. He's not a running quarterback, but he is a mobile quarterback. He can extend plays with his legs. If he gets flushed out of the pocket, he can scramble. He can scramble for the first down, so you have to respect the run game, but he's always keeping his eyes down the field because the Buckeyes probably have the best wide receiver core in the nation. You'd be crazy not to utilize those weapons. They have one of the best coaching staffs. Chip Kelly, Knowles, one of the best offensive play callers ever, and one of the best defensive play callers in college football right now. Right now, they're averaging 35.8 points a game. That's a top 15 offense. They throw for 271.3. They're running for 163.2. Very balanced. Where they had some issues this season was their offensive line. They're down 3 starters. You've seen them play really well, play together, open up the run lanes, Tennessee. But then you also see them where they cannot get the run game going, and that pass game has to step up. But thankfully for them, they have one of the best wide receiver cores. Don't get too Michigan-centric. When they played Michigan, they tried to get physical, run the ball on Michigan. It did not work. Michigan was able to punch them in the mouth, but they come out the next game versus Tennessee, and they air it out. They go air raid, basically hurling the ball down the field, dink and dunk passes. They shredded them through the air. They have a wide receiver core. They can beat you multiple ways. When you can throw the ball, you got to drop those safeties. That opens up some lanes for the running game. When you can run the ball, that opens up play action for the passing game. So round and round we go. Both of those things can complement one another, but you have to use them together. Looking at the team, right now they're only giving up 12.2 points per game. That is the number one defense in the nation. Even all the way through the playoffs, they've been able to maintain their status as the number one defense. They get after. You saw what Sawyer was able to do this past game. When that defense is on, particularly the front seven, they get a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Top 10 in sacks, top 10 in quarterback pressures, top 10 in tackles for a loss. When they get in the backfield, there's going to be hell to play. They're going to get pressure, sacks, fumbles, turnovers, but they're going to disrupt the passing game. Notre Dame doesn't have a high-octane passing game, but if you can disrupt the running game with some tackles for a loss, you're going to force Notre Dame into third and long situations, and that is not where they want to find themselves. And right now, they're only giving up 184.4 through the air. One of the best secondaries in the nation. If you force them into third and long, that secondary is going to feast, and then you're also only giving up 89.9 on the ground. One of the best rush defenses in the nation. It's strength on strength. Notre Dame has a top 10 rushing attack. The Buckeyes have a top 10 rush defense. Who's going to win? This is going to be an old school style of football. Ground and pound, line of scrimmage, trench warfare football. It's going to be decided at the line of scrimmage. The offensive lines versus the defensive line. Who's going to get the most push, but who's going to get the most consistency over 4 quarters? Depth will definitely be tested for both teams. Looking at the Buckeyes playmakers, you have Will Howard throwing it, running it. One of the best 1-2 running back punches in the nation. Trevion Henderson, Quinton Junkins, I've been saying the whole playoffs, they're just going to cycle those guys. 4 to 5 carries, switch them. 4 to 5 carries, switch them. You have to maintain pressure on them. Not 1, not 2, not 3. Over 4 quarters of physical football. They want to play competitively first half. They want to dominate the second half. Once your defensive line starts to get wore down, that's when those guys start to pick up massive yardage. Don't forget what Texas did versus the Buckeyes this last week. Last play of the first half, they think they're going into the locker room. Halftime's over. They dump it off to Henderson. He takes it 75 yards. You don't want to leave those lanes for these guys. Too many good running backs, and they can pass block. And then for the playmakers for wide receiver, they have the best wide receiver core in the nation. Tate, Smith, Egbuka. Smith, probably the best freshman college football has ever seen. Smith and Egbuka will both be first-round guys when they come out. They're both on the same team. If you can cover Smith, who's covering Egbuka? There's always going to be someone wide open. But don't forget what Texas was able to do versus Notre Dame. They were able to take the deep passing game away. Smith, 1 reception, 3 yards. So it is possible, but that's when guys like Tate step up. They make the big dink and dunk plays when you need it. There's multiple weapons there. It's very hard. It will test your secondary covering all 3 of those guys. And then when you look at Notre Dame, Riley Leonard. I've been very hard on Riley Leonard since he was the Duke quarterback. Not an accurate passer of the ball by any means. He's not that much better now. I still am harsh on him for his throwing ability, but one thing he is good at is he's physical, he's tough, and he scrambles. He's more of a runner than Will Howard. They will use his legs. Quarterback design runs, 3rd and 1s, 4th and 1s. There's going to be a lot of 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1s this game. This is going to be a foot by foot game. Who's going to dominate? Who's going to get the first downs on fourth down? And that's what's probably going to decide this game. Riley Leonard, he threw the game versus Georgia, he threw for 90 yards. Last week, I think he threw for 277. So you don't need 277 to win this game, but he has to at least get probably 170 through the air and 70 to 80 on the ground. If he can do that, that's going to be successful. That's their key to them winning this game, is his dominating on the ground, helping out Love in the run game going, keeping the Ohio State defensive line honest, forcing those safeties in, and just like they did when they hit the deep pass to Greathouse. Once those safeties start inching in, that's when you hit the play action, hit them deep. Right now, Notre Dame, they actually statistically have a top 10 offense, averaging 37 points a game, largest margin of victory in the nation, throwing for 202.4, running for 210.7, one of the most balanced teams in the nation in a top 10 rushing attack. And they also have a great defense. They have the number 3 defense in the nation, giving up 14.3 points a game, 184.1 through the air, 133 on the ground. So the Buckeyes have the number 1 defense. Notre Dame has the number 3 defense. We've all heard the saying, defense wins national championships. Well, this is it. The number 1 versus the number 3. Who's going to come out on top? Who's going to get the most forced turnovers? Who's going to get the most stops on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1? Who's going to force the other team into 3rd and long situations that they can't complete? Looking at the playmakers for Notre Dame, obviously, you have Riley Leonard throwing and running, and then you have Jeremiah Love. He showed he was fully healthy last week. He was able to dominate that touchdown run he had versus Texas. That physicality showed Marcus Freeman's mindset that he's built into this team. This team is physical. They want to win. This is going to be a tough game. This is a 1980s style of football that they're going to be playing. Where they kind of lack is in the wide receiver room. They don't have a bad wide receiver room. Probably their best wide receiver room they've had in the last probably 4 to 5 seasons. They are good as a whole, but they don't have a true number 1 threat wide receiver. The Buckeyes have 2. They would be the number 1 wide receiver no matter what team you drop them on. Notre Dame, Faison, Greathouse, Collins banged up. They have the playmakers there. They have a good wide receiver core, but someone's going to have to step up. It was Greathouse last week. Someone's got to step up to be that go-to guy for Riley Leonard. There will be 3rd and long situations. Someone's going to have to come down with those physical competitive passes. The keys to the victory for the Buckeyes. This is a tough one here because they have so many strengths, very little weaknesses, and they showed last week for Texas. When you take their strength away from them, they're going to find another way to win the game. Someone somewhere on this team is going to step up. The number 3 overall roster in all of college football. I would say the key to them winning is the offensive line. They were down 3 starters. The offensive line has showed its highs. It showed its lows. We've seen when they've opened up the run lanes. We've seen when they've given up a lot of pressure to Will Howard. Thankfully for them, Will Howard is mobile. He can run. He can get out of pressure, but you don't want him throwing 2 turnovers like you threw last week. You don't want to do that versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame has one of the best secondaries in the nation. They actually have a top 10 secondary. They lead the nation in getting turnovers, forcing turnovers. If you throw up some errant passes, because sometimes I don't know what Will Howard's doing. He throws the ball across his body over the middle of the field. Someone doesn't pick it off, but someone could have easily done that. You don't want to do that versus Notre Dame secondary. They will make you pay for it. So it's going to come down to the offensive line holding up. If they can hold up just long enough for Will Howard to find Smith, Egbuka, Tate, then they will be successful. The run game will open up. The passing game is going to open up the run game in this particular game. It's going to be very hard to establish the run game right out the gate. They would love to do that, but it's going to be the passing game. Once you hit Jeremiah Smith for, let's say, 20 yards, Notre Dame's going to start backtracking now. Safeties will start dropping. Linebackers will start having to watch the tight ends, the wide receivers, and then that's when you have the ground game start operating, and then they're completely confused. You would then at that point be able to dictate the pace of the game, keep Ohio State's keep the Notre Dame defense off balance. Now, where their weakness is, it's going to be in the offensive line. For the Ohio State Buckeyes, everything's going to come down to the offensive line. If they, on the defensive side, if their lines can't hold up, Notre Dame is going to get after you. There's going to be a lot of blitzing. There's going to be a lot of different looks, man-to-man zone. They're going to be changing things up constantly. You have to be able to adapt. But Will Howard, just like Riley Leonard, a lot of this game is going to be on his shoulders. Look for Chip Kelly to try to scheme his way as much as possible. The guy's a general in the booth. He's going to have to scheme his way around the Notre Dame defense. It is possible to score on Notre Dame, but sometimes you need them to help you out. Look for Chip Kelly to try to force Notre Dame's hand, try to find where the weaknesses are, especially in that wide receiver room. Because their wide receivers did so bad versus Texas, I think it's going to be the opposite this game. They are going to force things early. They're going to force things often, but it's going to come down to Ohio State being able to hold up on the offensive line and get just enough of the run game going to keep the passing game and that play action active. For Notre Dame, where their weakness is, to me, when you look at their team stats, they're giving up 133 on the ground per game. They have the number 3 defense, but still you can run on Notre Dame. How's that possible? The reason you can run on them is they are so aggressive. They get in the backfield so often, sometimes that opens up some lanes behind them. Guy gets loose, he can pick up 15 yards running. That's where their weakness is. Being able to keep that defensive line together to hold up on the run. You want your man-to-man guys on the line, your front 7 to dominate. That way the safeties don't have to worry about covering up. They can play their own ball-hawking defense down there, shut down the passing game. But if that defensive line is getting gouged, that's when your great secondary, a top 10 secondary in the nation, has to come in closer to the line of scrimmage. And that's where you open yourself up to being susceptible to the deep pass. We know the Buckeyes love the deep pass. They have so many fast weapons. They will utilize it. So you're going to have to trust the safeties to be on islands back there. But the only way for them to do that is if the defensive line does their job shutting down and controlling the run game. Where Notre Dame's strength is going to be, it's going to be running the ball. We all know what it is. Yes, they'll have to complete a 3rd and long at some point. One of the wide receivers will have to step up. But it's going to come down to Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard's legs. That's going to be the difference. His legs single-handedly won the Georgia game, did just enough this past game versus Penn State. They're going to have to utilize it again. You don't want him having turnovers, making awful passes. You want him to play his style of football. Play action passes and scrambling and being mobile. The quarterback design runs, that's going to make the difference. He's a big guy. And just like when Will Howard scrambled for that first down quarterback run last game, 4th quarter, at some point they're going to forget about the quarterback. You have to rely on Riley Leonard. Once he picks up that, there's nobody spying him. Pick off that 1,500 yards. That is such a letdown momentum-wise for the defense. You can single-handedly control this game, control time of possession. Ohio State, they can run the ball, but they love to pass. Notre Dame does not want to be put into passing situations. If they can run the ball, they keep the turnovers down, they control time of possession, they keep the Buckeyes offense off the field. So that's just a quick preview, a quick breakdown of the national championship matchup. We'll have our prediction video coming out later this week, just once we find out a little bit more about the health for each roster who might be missing this game. But make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments, please drop them below, and I will respond.